Good morning and welcome to Center for Spiritual Living Rogue Valley. I'm Kimberly Hawkins, Spiritual Director, Senior Minister here. We're delighted that you've all decided to join us for our Sunday celebration. We welcome you no matter where you happen to be on your own personal spiritual journey. Our mission is teaching spiritual tools to transform personal lives and help make a world that works for everyone. With us this morning to do our invocation and reading is practitioner Nancy Clay. Our chat manager is Alexa Ehrlich. If you're watching us live on Facebook, please feel free to type your name and where you're from in the chat box. We'd love to hear from you. And our musicians this morning, Anton Miserak and Laura Berryhill. I have a bit of sad news to share with our community this morning. Our beloved practitioner, Walter Carlisle, husband of Reverend Dr. Linda Rapond, made his transition early this morning. His whole family, children, Matt, Megan, and their spouses, have been holding vigil at his bedside for over a week now. And so we hold Walter and his family in our prayers this morning and dedicate this song to Walter Carlisle and all of those that we've lost this past year, all our loved ones. Anton and Laura wrote this beautiful song.
Once in a lifetime, a doorway opens, calling us back from where we came. A cosmic journey into the mountain. Masters call us by our name. Welcome home, Spirit. Welcome home, giving. Welcome home, living presence of our love. Welcome home, Spirit. Welcome home, blessing. Welcome home, living presence of our love. Presence of our love. Once in a lifetime, a doorway opens, inviting us to give the best we have. A cosmic journey into the heavens, going home to the love. Welcome home, Spirit. Welcome home, giving. Welcome home, living presence of our love. Welcome home, Spirit. Welcome home, blessing. Welcome home, living presence of our love. Presence of our love.
What I know is that there is one power, one presence, one divine spark that is the creator of all that exists. This wholeness, this oneness, is the heart of all that exists. I know myself and each of us and each and every life is guided and protected by this one. It is every form of love that exists. Knowing this to be the truth, With a glad and grateful heart, and with great gratitude for all that is, I release my word, the law of mind, for its execution and its journey to each of us in our own hearts. I have 2 readings this morning that I'm happy to share with you. I'm a little emotional. Calm envelops me as I rest in the peace of God. There is a place beyond thought, beyond action, a place of perfect peace and calm. Quiet contemplation leads me to this place, where I feel a peace that is beyond words. Here, my mind and heart rest in the presence and power of God. I relax as my desire to know this presence beckons, calls me into its embrace, and cradles me in deep, sweet bliss. Everything else falls away until I am one with this calming presence, the peace of God. As I bring my attention back to the present, I carry my newfound calm with me. I slow the rhythm of my life, settle my thoughts, and more easily feel the presence of the divine. I am comforted knowing I am never separate from God. The peace of God is my peace and your peace forever. And I have one more short poem that I'd like to read called Deep Within You. Deep within you is the center. Deep within you is the peace. Sink within and find the center. Sink within the perfect peace. Deep the lotus person sitting, deep the sinking, flowing finds. Beyond the questions, splitting, chiding, beyond conclusions, answers and facts, beyond all doubts and perseverance, beyond all feelings and all minds, deep within you is the center. Deep within you is the peace. And we could say together, in honor of Walter, and so it is.
We'd like to do another original song, a new song for you. Starlight filters through the dream time, sending its brilliance to the world. So many questions in the meantime, forgetting all the games. Where to turn to go now? Who will hold your hand? Who will trust your perfect dreaming heart? Birds flying home and the water moving swiftly. Where are they going in the twilight? It's the answer to our prayers, the mystery unspoken, the song sung unbroken and free. The elemental fire, the path beyond desire, the grace that lifts us higher till we see. Can you see your face in the mirror of the angels? They whisper back the secrets of your life. It's the answer to our prayers, the mystery unspoken, long sung, unbroken and free. The elemental fire, the path beyond desire, the grace that lifts us higher till we see. Take a deep breath into the wonder of your loving, precious soul. Can you feel it? The beauty of each day we walk this earth refines that wonder into gold. It's the answer to our prayers, the mystery unspoken, the song sung unbroken and free. The elemental fire, the path beyond desire, the grace that lifts us higher till we see, till we see, till we see.
Thank you so much, Anton Miserak and Laura Berryhill. I've entitled my message this morning, Hide and Seek. And thinking about it this week, I had some wonderful memories from childhood. I don't know about you, but I grew up in a very small town, a suburb of Scranton, Pennsylvania, which isn't that big of a city in itself. And the neighborhood where I lived, the whole block had backyards that abutted one another. There were no fences around the yards, no barriers, so it was kind of like the whole block had one big backyard. Lots of children growing up together in that time. And we often, in the evening, especially in the summer, would play hide and seek and other games in the backyard together. And it was so much fun. We'd play until almost dark when parents would yell and call us back inside. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that as a child, but the thrill, of hiding and creatively finding new spots to hide, and then, the thrill and the surprise when you finally find somebody, just great, great memories. And, I thought about how this idea of hiding and seeking really applies to the messages, the lessons that were here in this earth school for this amount of time to learn. I think that we're here to uncover, to find, to seek and find things that may be hidden from view at first glance. We're called to dig a little deeper, to put on a new set of lenses so that we can see truth, so that we can see God. We teach in Science of Mind that God is all there is and that it's everywhere present. And if the truth be told, I think all of us at times have a hard time really believing that and seeing that. When you think of this past year and all the hardships that we've gone through, the social upheaval, the partisanship, animosity, the white supremacy that we've seen, COVID and the deaths, there's so much conflict, loss, appearance of lack. Sometimes it's hard to see the presence of the divine, that all-providing goodness that we believe God is. So I want to talk about three things this morning in regard to this idea of hide and seek. I want to talk about this idea that it is indeed all God. I want to talk about the need for a new pair of glasses, a new lens, if you will, a new perspective, a new way of looking at what is currently in our lives, either personally or collectively. And finally, I want to talk about the need to seek oneness. Seek oneness, seek the presence of oneness, the knowing of oneness, rather than judgment and division, which, in our limbic brains, we're kind of hardwired to look at differences, to notice differences. It's part of our survival mechanism to notice when danger is present, when difference is present. And it really takes a leap and a conscious effort to look instead, to seek instead, and to find our commonalities and how the truth is we are one because we are all made of God stuff. So first of all, this idea that it's all God. I love the passage in Romans where Paul says, all things work together for the good for those who love God. And I might interpret that all things work together for the good for those who are willing to seek the divine, to find and see the divine in everything that's going on. I'm going to share a story that's one of my favorite stories, and if you've listened to our messages in the past, you may have heard this one, but I love it. It's a story of a poor farmer who owns a rather old, lame mule. But the mule is very important to his farming. It's what helps him plow the fields and sow the fields. One morning, the family wakes up and to discover that the mule has died in the middle of the night in its stall. It's gone. And the farmer is bereft, and he runs around the town saying, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Isn't this just the worst possible thing that could have happened to us? And he passes the wise wisdom keeper in the village who says to him, when he says it's the worst possible thing, maybe yes, maybe no. Several days later, a herd of wild horses is running near the farmer's property. And because the mule is dead, his son has the idea to go and capture one of the wild horses. So he lassos one, brings it back to the farm, and the farmer is elated. I mean, instead of this broken down mule, now they have this young, fine, strong stallion. And he goes about the village, isn't this great? Isn't this the best thing? I'm so lucky. And once again, as he passes the wise man in the village, he replies, yeah, maybe yes, maybe no. A couple days later, the man's son is trying to break in the stallion. He is thrown from the horse and has a terrible broken leg as a result. He's laid up, and now the only young, able-bodied person to help the farmer is no longer able to help him. And of course, you guessed it, he runs around the village. Isn't this the worst possible thing that could happen? And one more time, the wise man answers, maybe yes, maybe no. Finally, not too long after that, the king's men come through the town doing conscriptions. They're trying to round up any able-bodied young man to go to a war, which is surely going to mean the death of most of them. It's a lost cause. And the only young man in the village who is not taken off to that war is, you guessed it, the farmer's son, because he is laid up. So while we're all given challenges in life, we don't know where those challenges lead us. I think that we're drawn, one, to accept and to trust that all things work together for the good if we seek and recognize the presence of the divine in all that's going on. And secondly, if we're willing to learn the lessons along the way. I love the passage from A Way of Mastery that says, all my experiences, in other words, everything that happens to me in my life, everything, is a stepping stone laid before me of God to guide me home. Beautiful philosophy, if we can remember that. I love this quote from Anne Voskamp. She said, the secret to joy is to keep seeking God where we doubt he is. And that is the challenge, isn't it? It's easy to see God when things are going our way and life feels abundant and our relationships are loving and everything is going well. It's harder when we are presented with challenges. So she says, the secret to joy is to keep seeking God where we doubt he exists. And I was thinking of Walter Carlyle when I read that this morning. Walter was confined to a wheelchair, I don't know for how long, but for most of the last several years of his life. Never once did I hear him complain, never once. We who know him knew that joy was just in his demeanor. It was part of his being. He would come to our morning calls, and always he was this presence of joy. He was able to take from life the good, and he cried at the drop of a hat because his heart was so wide open and touched. He certainly sought God in everything, and as a result, not only did he feel and celebrate joy, but he spread it. He spread it to everyone who knew him and everyone who was around him. all things work together for the good for those who seek the divine presence. So moving on to this idea of the lens through which we look, I love the story of a young successful couple who moved into their dream home, brand new house. They're sitting at breakfast early on once they've moved, looking out the window, and they see their neighbor who is hanging laundry on the clothesline. And the wife sitting at her breakfast table notices that the laundry is dirty. And she says to her husband, "That woman is hanging dirty laundry on her clothesline. Didn't anybody ever teach her how to wash clothes? Look at this. What is she doing?" And this happens several more times. Every few days, neighbor would be out there hanging up clothes, and the woman would just say, "Oh my gosh, what's she doing?" One morning, as they sat eating breakfast and they looked outside, the same woman was hanging clothes, but the woman sitting at the breakfast table said, "Oh my gosh, her clothes are clean. Look, the colors are sparkling. The whites are white. Wow, did someone teach her how to do laundry?" She said to her husband, "Did you say something to our neighbor?" He said, "No, dear. Actually, no, but I got up this morning early and I washed our window." I washed our window. So the lesson, of course, is that we need to sometimes wash the window, wash the lens through which we see others, not be so quick to judge. I heard someone recently on Facebook say, I guess it's part of a book about agreements, and one of the agreements is to always assume good intent. When someone does something that we don't like or that we think was wrong, assume good intent. And I love that because it's a lens that helps us see the good, that helps us have compassion and understanding rather than harsh judgment and condemnation. So that lens through which we look, another way to put it, I know that Richard Chamberlain's father, Chuck C., became a real powerful teacher in the AA movement. And he once shared in a book of his talks that was called A New Pair of Glasses that he was very judgmental for years of his son Richard because Richard was gay. And the father just didn't understand it and condemned it. And he said, "Finally, I realized that I was looking through these glasses at the way I thought things should be, the way I wanted them to be, instead of looking at the beauty before me of what was." So we need sometimes to don a new pair of glasses, to wipe away the judgments, the preconceived notions, the looking and seeking for differences or what's wrong, rather than seeking the divine in everything that happens, in every person that we encounter. When you can't see God, one person said, change your focus. Change your focus because God is always present. We just don't always see him. There was a creation story. I don't remember what tradition. I was trying to remember it this morning, but it goes something like this. The Creator, when he created the universe, wanted to hide somewhere from his creation. And so he called together a band of angels and was asking them, where should we hide? And they brainstormed, and somebody suggested, God, you could hide under the soil and the earth. And God said, no, humans are brilliant. They're gonna dig up the earth one day and they'll find me. Well, you could hide in the sky somewhere. And he goes, no, they'll figure out a way to fly. They'll find me there. How about under the sea? No, he said, same problem. Finally, someone came up with a solution. The divine, the creator, would hide itself within each of us. And the creator said, they won't think to look there. And I don't believe God intended to hide itself from us, but I like that story because we don't always tend to remember that we are part of the divine. We are a creation of the divine. We are an emanation, an incarnation of the divine. But just as that's true for me, it's true for each and every person I see, whether I agree with them, whether I look like them, whether I approve or like what they're doing or not. We are all the divine. The final story I want to tell today is a lengthier one. And it comes from our book of the month, which is See No Stranger. a memoir and manifesto of revolutionary love. See No Stranger by a brilliant Sikh woman by the name of Valerie Kaur. And she tells a story that is a true story that I remember but didn't know all the details. I'm going to share them with you this morning. When the 9/11 attack happened, I was living in Phoenix, Arizona. And I remember hearing in the news, and perhaps you remember too, although it didn't get a lot of national attention, that 4 days after that attack, on September 15th, a Sikh grandfather by the name of Balbir Sodhi Singh was planting flowers at his gas station and convenience store that he owned in Mesa, Arizona, a suburb of Phoenix. And a man drove by in a black sedan and put a gun out the window and shot him multiple times in the back and killed him. He killed him because the lens through which he looked said this man is brown-skinned, he is bearded, and he's wearing a round turban. He must be a terrorist. And I didn't know details of Balbir's personhood and life until I read Valerie Kaur's book. Balbir was actually, the family was friends with Valerie Kaur's family, so she knew of them. And when a lot of these attacks started happening, these terribly prejudiced attacks against Muslims and other people because they were assumed to be terrorists. I'll divert for a minute and remember that I was on the faculty of Phoenix Country Day School at the time. And I remember we brought in a speaker from the Muslim Speaker Bureau to talk about Muslim doesn't teach terrorism. It's one of the three major Abrahamic traditions, just like Christianity and Judaism is. They teach love one another. So terrorism is not taught in the Quran. It's not taught by Muslims. And so there was an effort to educate people after those attacks. Well, here's the story. After a lot of these acts of terrorism were happening, Valerie Kaur and her husband went, well, actually, I don't think she was married at the time. She and her mom and other people went and wanted to create a documentary. So they visited different people and communities that were affected by these acts of retribution. She went to Phoenix and interviewed Balbir Singh's family. And what she learned was that he had moved years ago from India, Punjab, India, to escape religious persecution. There were pogroms against the Sikhs in India. And he lived in a community of extended families, sisters and brothers and their children. And his children were grown up, but he would visit the family home and always had candy in his pocket to share with the kids. He was their favorite uncle. He would play with them. The convenience store and gas station he owned, when people would come in and needed gas and didn't have money to pay, he would let them fill up and let them go on their way. He let children come and skateboard on the territory, even though his brother, Rana, would say, you shouldn't do that, Balbir. You could be sued if someone gets hurt. And Balbir's response was, these are children of God. Let them have fun. Whenever they passed a Christian church, Balbir would bow his head. And at one point, his son said to him, Dad, why do you do that? We're not Christian. Why are you bowing your head? And Balbir's response was, God is everywhere. The morning of the attacks, after the attacks happened, Balbir had gone to Costco seeking to get some American flags to hang in his store. Hard to find at that point. They had sold out. There was a jar at the Costco checkout stand, relief fund for 9/11. He had wanted to go to New York when he heard about the attacks. He wanted to go to help, and his brother said to him, unless you're an ambulance driver or a doctor, what are you going to do? So when he saw that jar, his brother said, I can't go to New York, but I can give what I have. So he emptied his wallet, all $45 in cash, and put it in the relief jar that day, that very day that he went home with the flowers he purchased and was planting flowers when he was shot and killed. Wow. The Sikh community at the time came together. They went to their guru, who went to a Sikh doctor, who reached out to the interfaith community in the greater Phoenix area. And they held a press conference to educate people about the Sikh religion. I'll divert for a minute and tell you my own experience, which is quite limited. But I had a Sikh student when I was on the faculty at Phoenix Country Day. The Sikhs don't believe they should cut their hair, so this student, a male student, wore his hair in a bun on his head. And at the end of the school year, his family and all the families of the Sikh students in the school invited every single teacher. Now, this was a high school, so there were a lot of teachers for each kid. And they invited us to a dinner, and the purpose of the dinner was to honor the teachers. My student gave me a rose, and they fed us. And the idea was gurus, teachers, are very honored in the Sikh tradition. When I went to the Parliament of World Religions in Salt Lake City, I experienced the Sikhs preparing a langar, which is a communal lunch that they prepare for free. They fed thousands of people every day at lunch, no charge. They prepared a vegetarian meal. We all walked in. We were given a white hat to wear, sat on the ground if we were able, and shared a communal lunch. This is my experience of this beautiful faith tradition. So, after the funeral, Valerie Kaur, the author, took her mom and traveled to India to interview the widow of Balbir, who was still there. They had planned to get together in November for their anniversary 2 months later. She was just inconsolate. She loved him so much, and he was gone. And so when Valerie Kaur and her mother walked in, fellow Sikhs, they embraced and they were crying. That was all they really could do. And Valerie said, I had written a series of questions I was going to ask her, and they all went out the window, and I had one question that I asked Joginder, Balbir's widow. Valerie asked her, what would you like to say to the American people? What she expected was bitterness. What she expected was some kind of condemnation. And instead, what she said was, I can never forget the love they showed me. And Valerie said, say what, love? Joginder had gone back to the funeral. Thousands of people showed up at that funeral. And what she said to Valerie Kaur was, they did as much as they could for me. They gave me so much love. At the memorial, I had no friends or community there, but everyone gathered together, Hindu, Muslim, Christian. Everyone was crying. Sikhs weren't the only ones who were crying. Everyone was crying. When asked that question, what Joginder's message to the American people was, she wanted to thank them for loving her. Talk about a lens. Talk about washing your own windows, seeking God and finding God, and seeing and speaking God. Oneness. Such an amazing, amazing story. So back to this book title, See No Stranger. My goodness, it's so easy to get disheartened right now with all of the division and violence going on, the white supremacist movement, more recently the reactivation of violence among Palestinians and Jews. All emanations of God. Instead of seeing oneness, we're seeing division so many, many places. And so one of the things that Valerie Kaur encourages in her book, and I love this, is to practice wonder. When we look at someone else, perhaps it's that grandfather Sikh who was brown-skinned and maybe we're not, with a beard and a turban, we wonder, we practice curiosity. What makes you light up? What's important to you? Tell me about your family. We practice curiosity. She says we practice this idea of seeing others that look different is, I see you, you look different, but you are simply a part of me that I don't yet know. I love this. So here's the practice that she recommends, that she does. She says, it's a simple practice. She says, as I move through my day and come across faces on the street or in the subway or on a screen, these days that's more likely, I say in my mind, sister, brother, sibling, aunt, uncle. I start to wonder about each of them as a person. When I do this, I'm returning my mind to see more and more kinds of people as part of us rather than them. I say in my mind, you are a part of me I do not know yet. I practice orienting to the world with wonder, preparing myself for the possibility of connection. Ugh, I love that. Imagine if we could all do that. And so these are some of the things she recommends here as we go through the next weeks and months together in these challenging times. She says, begin with one person. Choose one person and wonder about them. And she says, the next time a black boy in your city is killed by a police officer, or a turbaned Sikh father is beaten, a Jewish person is stabbed, a trans woman is murdered, or an indigenous woman goes missing, a Muslim child is attacked, show up. Show up at the public vigils or memorials to grieve in person. You don't need to know people in order to grieve with them. You grieve with them in order to get to know them. How can you grieve, she says? People you never knew that don't look like you, share your history. Grieve with those who loved them, with the living. That, she says, is a revolutionary act. Remember the subtitle of that book, A Memoir, a Manifesto of Revolutionary Love. So, my friends, I'm thinking of some of the passages. I grew up Christian, and so I often think of scripture passages. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all else will be added unto you. What does that mean? It means sometimes it's hidden. The presence of the divine is sometimes hidden. Sometimes we have such disagreement and differences with people, we don't see God. We don't see the divine in them. But if we seek God first, everything else gets added unto us. It's not a magic bullet that takes away all conflict and all challenges. Life on Earth School is filled with challenges, but it can so transform our relationships with ourselves, with each other, with the world community. And so I'm thinking about these dark times that we have walked through lately, and we could consider them a tomb where we're seeing darkness and we don't believe in evil, but we're seeing deeds that displease us, or we can think of it as a womb. We can think of it as a dark place, but a birthing place, where if we seek the presence of God, if we clean off our windows, if we don a new pair of glasses to always look for the presence of the divine, for the presence of good, if we assume the best intent when we're looking at somebody that we're in disagreement with, when we know the truth is that we are one with one another, everything shifts. This can be a womb. This can be a practice of revolutionary love. Let's go into prayer. As I take a breath, I am grateful. I am grateful for this simple ability to breathe. Grateful for this life in Earth School, where I know this presence of God is indeed all there is. There is nothing else to be made from. That Creator didn't intentionally hide itself. It exists in all the beauty, all the love. It exists in that outpouring of love in that Sikh community. That understanding that when one of us is hurt, all of us are hurt. That understanding that we are one in the presence as the presence. And so the goodness, the peace that passeth understanding, the love, the harmony, the order is always present if we're willing to trust it, if we're willing to know that all things work together for the good, for those who seek, for those who love, for those who know that presence of God can never be absent. We like to say there's no spot where God is not, and yet sometimes we have to seek. We have to wash the windows through which we look, just as Joe Ginder was able to do, to see the outpouring of love that was so much more powerful in her experience than that one misguided person who pulled the trigger. And so my prayer, my intention for the world this morning and always is that more and more of us are able to rise. Our theme for this month is Holy, Holy Uprising. Let us each be a part of this holy, W-H-O-L-L-Y, complete, holy, sacred uprising, lifting our view to that God's eye view, to see the presence of love, to see that even when we don't know someone, they're a part of us that we haven't quite gotten to know yet. Let's take one person this week to wonder about, one person in our lives or on the screen or on the street that looks different, and maybe we're off-put at first, and let's practice that idea of wondering about them, perhaps just getting to know them, asking questions, being open, keeping our hearts open. And as I say that phrase, I dedicate this prayer to Walter Carlyle, who was such the epitome of walking around with an open heart to be touched by the smallest things in life, an open heart to have compassion and love. Thank you, dear Walter. May you soar with the angels. And a thanks to all our loved ones who have made their transition this year. A thanks today for beautiful Balbir Sodhi Singh, whose last journal entry before he died was Waheguru, the Sikh word for God. I am open to whatever assignment, whatever task you have for me. Knowing that in his death, he helped the world learn more about Sikhs, about this beautiful faith tradition. He helped the world know and understand more, that we can't make snap judgments and assume the worst. We can love one another. Isn't that a simple, simple command? Love one another. And so in gratitude for these powerful stories, for all the faith traditions who really agree about treating each other as we would want to be treated, for gratitude for the interfaith groups that came together in that community after 9/11 in many instances of violence, and gratitude for our ability to see no stranger. There is no such thing. We are all God in expression. I release this word into that law, the heart of God, which always receives the impress of our thought and acts upon it. It is done, my friends, and so we say together, and so it is. Amen. We go back to Anton Miserak and Laura Berryhill.
Our dear friend Hardeep Basra, who has graced Ashland for 30 years with wonderful Indian food, was driving down the I-5 corridor, stopped in Reading at a gas station, and realized the person selling him gas was someone he went to grammar school with in the Punjab. So in honor of that, he did one of those amazing, I'm going to cook food for 1,000 Sikhs at their Gurdwara, and he asked us to be the music for that event. This is the song we sang. It's a very favorite Sikh song. It's a song to call on the goodness of the universe to strengthen everybody trying to walk a good path in life.
Hey Govinda, hey Gopala, hey Govinda, hey Gopala, hey Dayal, hey Govinda, hey Gopala, hey Govinda, hey Gopala, hey Dayal, Prananata, Anata Sakhi, Prananata, Anata Sakhi, Prananata, Anata Sakhi, Prananata,
natasake dini dara na Hey Govinda, Hey Gopala, Hey Govinda, Hey Gopala, Hey Dayal. Andakupu Mahabayana, Andakupu Mahabayana, Andakupu Mahabayana, Andakupu Mahabayana, Nanaki Pare Utaha. Hey Govinda, Hey Gopala, Hey Govinda, Hey Gopala, Hey Dayal. Hey Govinda, Hey Gopala, Hey Govinda, Hey Gopala, Hey Dayal. Lord, Hey Dayal. Lord, Hey Dayal.
I am so grateful to Laura Berryhill and Anton Mizrak, who always have multicultural songs in many languages, many faith traditions to share with us. How delightful. Thank you both so much. It's time in our service now where we talk about the spiritual practice of sacred giving. This is actually a very deep spiritual practice where we get to recognize all the good that we're receiving and decide to share a portion of it to those places where we are being spiritually fed. I want to also remind you that we as a community tithe on everything that we receive for our Sunday broadcasts. This quarter, we are tithing to Jackson County Foster Parents Association. We tithe to places that share our mission in helping to make a world that works for everyone. So I'm going to ask you, if you will, to share in our giving affirmation with me. I'm placing my own hand over my heart. From the love of pure spirit within me, I bless this gift. I send it forth to heal and bless and prosper. It is evidence of my faith and belief. It does great work in the world, and it returns to me multiplied abundantly. There are several ways to give to the Center for Spiritual Living Rogue Valley. On our website, cslroguevalley.org, you can hit the donate button. You can mail a check to CSL RV at P.O. Box 1458, Medford, Oregon, 97501. Recently, we have finally reactivated our donate button. So if you're listening live or to the recording on Facebook, you can hit the donate button and make your contribution, your gift there. And I want to thank everyone who has continued to support us while we are not yet able to meet in person. Good news on that front, and I know the slide won't have these events in this order, but a few announcements. We are going to have an in-person meeting on the first Sunday in June, June 6th, the regular time, 10:30 a.m. at Bear Creek Park Amphitheater in Medford. So bring a lawn chair, bring something to drink. We'll be socially distanced. I recommend you bring a mask just in case you want to have close-up encounters, because we are not knowing who has chosen to be vaccinated and not. But, oh, it will be so good to see everyone. I hope you can join us if you're local on June 6th. We also continue to offer weekly spiritual practice and connection calls on Zoom, Monday morning at 9, Wednesday morning at 9, and Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Check our newsletter for the Zoom connections. And if you're not receiving our Wednesday electronic e-newsletter, you can sign up on Facebook under email or send us an email request to cslroguevalley@gmail.com. Also, we do have our new home visioning session. We are visioning for a new home as we come together again as we're able, and that session is happening at 6:30 p.m. Tuesday, May 18th, which is this Tuesday evening. Again, the information will be in the newsletter or on our Facebook page. Finally, you can always submit prayer requests on our website. Look for prayer requests. Our team of practitioners and ministers is honored to pray for the whole week for whatever your prayer request may be. I think that's it for announcements. We go once again to Anton and Laura for our closing song.
And our closing song is by a reformed sailor from the slave trade.
Knowing amazing grace is the birthright of each of us, the free gift that we all receive from the Creator. Thank you, Anton and Laura. Before we leave, I want to just acknowledge our very tiny skeleton crew of volunteers and our sound man this morning. Jason Rummel is our director, producer, and only cameraman. And Vivian Lacey was on slides this morning. I mentioned Alexa Ehrlich was manning the chat, or I should say staffing or womaning the chat. Thank you to Alexa. And our sound engineer was Tom Frederick. Thank you all so much. And so this week, let us all practice wondering about anyone who we don't know, knowing that they're a part of us we don't yet know, so that we might truly see no stranger, understanding that we're all spiritual siblings, children of the one God. Blessings, my friends, and soar with the angels, Walter Carlyle, and all our loved ones who have departed, who have gone beyond the veil recently. Take care. Namaste.